Hey fellow knitters, welcome to my color work series, and in this video I'm going to show you how to add a lining to a hat. It's actually a very simple and nice way to do that. This teal portion actually represents the hat, and then the striped orange and lavender, it's like a salmon colored and lavender, represent the lining. And if you notice, both the hat and the lining share the same ribbing. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. And so when the hat, if you notice, both of these are display the right side of your work, and the wrong side of the work, of course, is on the inside. And then when you put the lining back in to the hat itself, basically both of the wrong sides, so the wrong side of the hat and the wrong side to the lining, are touching each other. And in this video I'm going to show you how to achieve that. And of course, if you turn the hat inside out, you actually have another hat. So you've got the striped portion on the outside, and then the Fair Isle portion of the hat actually serves as the lining. So this is a really great technique to do this, because it makes for an insulated hat, or a hat that has more volume to it, so it's a warmer hat, but also it gives you the versatility to actually have two hats in one. And of course, we pull them out because they're only attached at the brim portion. Okay, so for this you will need, obviously, your ribbing. So you finish the ribbing, and then you will also need and I'm going to show you two methods to do this. So you'll need two additional circular needles of the same gauge, or roughly the same gauge. Well, the second needle is going to be the one that's going to be in the back. It should be the same gauge, but if not, that's okay, because when you knit off of this with your whatever knitting needle that you are using, the gauge of the work assumes the needle it's being knitted onto, not off of. But in any event, I'll show you that in the video. So you'll need, for this first part, or this first way I'm going to show you, you will need two circular needles, because essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create, we're going to pick up a stitch in between each of the stitches that are already on there. So we're going to have something going on like this, and then what you're going to do is you're going to split the stitches off, because the stitches are every other one that we're going to be splitting off, and we're going to be putting one set on one circular needle, and then the other set on the other circular needle that will remain in the back of your work, or on the wrong side of your work while you knit your hat. The second method I'm going to show you is how to take these stitches that I showed you that are going to actually be the yarn overs, and rather than putting them onto a knitting needle, actually threading a lifeline through them, because we're going to be reserving those stitches so that we can come back after finishing the hat portion and work the lining portion. And the reason why I'm going to show you this is sometimes when you have that extra needle in the back of your work before you start the hat portion of your work, it can be very tedious or very cumbersome to work with your work on your hat while you have this needle that's basically almost touching, or pretty much touching, this needle here, and it makes working your first several stitches a little difficult. Once you get past the needle and then you have something to kind of hold on to and work into, it's not an issue. But the first several stitches, maybe the first 3 or 4 stitches, rows rather, not stitches but rows, because you're working in the round, it's a little tedious to do that. So what I like to do is I like to thread a lifeline through those reserved yarn overs that I'll be using for the lining. I like to thread a lifeline because it's there reserving the stitches, but it's out of your way when you're working the first few rows of your hat. Okay, so I have exactly 14 rows here in this round. I've cast on, this is 144 stitches, but I've got actually 14 starting with the sea green down here. It's 4 stitches, or 4 rows rather, and then the blue is 10 rows. Of course, so that's 14 rows total, and the 14th row is actually what's on the needle. So I'm getting ready to work the 15th row. Now, in working this row, we're going to be doing yarn overs in between each of these stitches. So we've got a knit one, purl one ribbing, and we're actually going to put a yarn over in between each one of these, starting after the first knit stitch. And then when we end with the purl stitch, there'll be a yarn over. So you will have 144 of your normal stitches, but then the yarn overs will also create 144 yarn overs. And this row that I'm working right now is actually going to be row 15 for the hat for your ribbing, and then the yarn overs will be considered round 0. So this is round 15 will be the stitches for the hat that I'll be continuing on, and then the yarn overs that will be reserved or left behind on the wrong side, either with the additional circular needle or with a lifeline, represents round 0. And then when I pick up knitting the hat, that will be round 16, and then after finishing the hat and picking up with the yarn overs, the first round that I knit would be round 1. So that's how that works. Okay, so now we're going to start doing the yarn overs. So, and this of course is in between the ribbing. So the first stitch is a knit stitch, and then we need to do a purl stitch, or we need to do a yarn over and then a purl stitch. So after a knit stitch and before a purl stitch, you wrap your yarn around like this, and so there's your yarn over there. You've got knit 1, yarn over, purl 1, and now we need to do a yarn over and knit the next stitch, and then we bring the yarn forward and around. So we've got knit 1, yarn over, purl 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, purl 1. And now we're going to do the next yarn over, and then the knit, and then yarn over and purl. So I'm going to continue that all the way around, and then what will end up happening is I'll have 288 stitches, because remember I start off with 144 stitches, and then after going around for this round I'll actually have 288 stitches, and then I'll be ready to unzip them, if you will, off of this needle. So we'll basically be passing all of these stitches onto 2 needles, and so I'll show you that when I come back. Okay, so that was the last purl stitch, and so then you want to have a yarn over after that. And so that is actually will be stitch 288. So I've basically doubled. They're jammed on here. This is a 16-inch circular needle, so they're on there pretty tight. And so now what we're ready to do is to transfer or split these stitches between 2 needles. So I'll show you the first way where I do it between 2 needles, and then I'll show you the second way where I actually use a lifeline, because again it's kind of hard working with when you have 2 needles that are side by side until this needle, because this is how it's going to look on the inside of your work. So the outside represents the purple needle is the outside of your work, or the right side of your work, and then the wooden needle will be on the wrong side of your work and will be in place for you to knit your lining after you've completed the hat. So in essence what you're doing is you're taking the stitches on the purple needle and you're knitting away from your wooden needle like that, and then of course that will complete the hat. And then when you turn your work inside out, it will reveal this needle, which will now be on the right side of your lining. And then as you knit your lining, you've got your right side on the outside and your wrong side on the inside, which ultimately ends up being against the wrong side of your hat, and that's what creates that lining effect. Okay, so I've got my 2 needles that I'm going to be transferring the 288 stitches between. So all of the knit and purl stitches will be transferred off of this purple needle and onto this purple needle, And then all the yarn overs that are in between those stitches will be transferred onto the wooden needle that will be in the back. You always keep that needle in the back or away from you. So the first stitch is a knit stitch, so that comes off and onto your new or second purple needle. Next stitch is a yarn over, so that goes onto the wooden needle. Next stitch is a purl stitch, so that comes off and onto the purple. Next stitch is a yarn over, so that goes onto the wooden. And you just kind of keep rocking your needle back and forth like that to catch the stitches. But again, it's every other one. All the yarn overs will belong onto the wooden needle, whereas all the knit and purl stitches belong onto the new purple needle. So I'll continue around and then show you what it should look like once you are finished, and then what to do next. And I'm coming up on the last of the stitches. So there's the purl, and then we need one more yarn over to end on there, because we started with a stitch. So we did stitch, yarn over, and so we always end with the yarn over, so don't forget that one. So now if you spread your work out, you'll kind of see what's going on. All right, so on the outside, there you go. So on the outside, you've got your purple needle. And then on the inside, or on the wrong side of your work, you've got your wooden needle. And so the idea is with the purple needle, you knit your hat, and then when you turn the hat inside out, it reveals your wooden needle, and then that's what you'll knit from the wrong side, which will become the right side of your lining. You knit the lining from your wooden needle, and so that's in essence what gives this effect here. Now, I find it very awkward to knit the first few rows with I mean, it can be done, but I find it very awkward and very tedious, because you're holding two needles. So what I like to do is I thread a lifeline into a tapestry needle, and then what I do is I transfer these stitches on the wooden needle onto the tapestry needle, and then onto the lifeline, and then temporarily remove the wooden needle, and of course your stitches will be reserved on your lifeline. And then either one of two things: either after you've knit enough rows for your hat, you can then turn your work inside out halfway through or whatever, and then put the needles, or put the stitches rather, back onto your wooden needle. Or you can wait until you've actually finished the entire hat, and then when you turn it inside out, ready to begin the lining, then transfer the stitches from the lifeline back onto your working needle. So here's where I'm temporarily taking them off of the yarn overs, off of the wooden needle that's on the inside. I'm transferring them to a lifeline, and then I'll knit my hat, and then after the hat is finished and I turn it inside out, I then have these stitches on the lifeline, or these yarn overs on the lifeline, and then I will retransfer them to a circular needle, one of the purple circular needles. Okay, so here I've actually finished the hat portion. So with the outer circular needle, I knitted up and completed the hat. So this is what the outer portion will look like. So now what you do is you turn your work, or you turn the hat inside out. So this is what's considered the wrong side of the hat, even though it's kind of a nice design in and of itself. But in here I've tied off I wove it into the very top. I left a little piece hanging there, which is not a big deal at all because it will be completely masked with the lining. So this right here is the second circular needle that we threaded through the yarn overs at the beginning of the video, or towards the beginning of the video, and we left this in reserve. So now this is what we will knit the lining from. So because this is the wrong side of the work, when we start knitting up, the right side of the work will be facing us, the wrong side of the work will be facing this wrong side of the work, and then when you complete the lining up at the top, that's where you have the reversible effect. To make it easier to knit, because it does share the ribbing, what I actually like to do is to turn the hat back. So this is the right side of the hat again, and then begin, and basically the ribbing or the rim of the hat is flipped down or up. It's like flipped up like that, which you can wear it like that if you want, but it's flipped up, and then it makes it easier to hold your work so that you can begin knitting the actual lining. So that is how you do a lining for a hat that shares the same brim, that creates a seamless edge, if you will, or a seamless joining of the lining to the hat. So thank you for watching my video. Please do subscribe to my channel. I do have other videos out there. There's actually a whole series in the Colorwork series, which this video is part of, but I also have a brioche knitting series as well. So again, thank you for watching.